A father and son living in Scarborough have been arrested and charged with several terror-related offenses. The pair were taken into custody over the weekend in Richmond Hill. Details are scarce, but RCMP say they were planning an attack on behalf of ISIS. Jamie Strachan has our top story tonight.
The RCMP says it has thwarted an imminent terrorist attack.
On July 28, 2024, GTN arrested a father and son at a hotel in Richmond Hill who were in the advanced stages of planning a serious, violent attack in Toronto.
A father and son, 62-year-old Ahmed and 26-year-old Mustafa El-Dibi, who were living in this rented Toronto home, face 9 terrorism-related charges, including conspiracy to commit murder for the benefit or at the direction of a terrorist group, namely the Islamic State or ISIS. The father was also charged with an assault that took place on behalf of ISIS outside of Canada in 2015. Both men were charged with possessing an axe and machete.
I want to emphasize there is no evidence to suggest that there is any remaining risk to the public.
The RCMP told reporters both men are Canadian citizens and were not previously known to police. Citing a publication ban, the RCMP wouldn't say who exactly was the target of the attack.
It's a very tense time, and we're all aware of that. We are still trying to establish completely who those targets might be.
At the El-Dibi home today, few answers. Neighbors told CBC they had seen police around the house over the last few days.
There were tenants there, so who moved in very recently, like about a year and a half. So it's not that they've been living here for long.
A house right across from us, 58. Yeah. They always say they're always in the backyard making a lot of noises and stuff.
For those in the intelligence community looking at this case, the remarkable thing here, the speed in which this investigation unfolded. This father and son duo, not even on authorities' radar at the beginning of July. Less than a month later, they're arrested in a hotel room, stopping what authorities say was an imminent terrorist attack.
This is really one of the challenges that we have is, the fact that you do want to kind of monitor. There's an expression trying to separate the walkers from the talkers. So who is just expressing extremist views and who's actually going to mobilize on them.
Both men are currently being held pending a bail hearing. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
Police have located human remains in a small village northeast of Toronto where they were searching for a Markham woman believed to have been kidnapped last week. The identity of the body hasn't been confirmed yet, but as Ryan Patrick Jones reports, the gruesome findings could bring the search for the missing woman to an end.
A preliminary ground search led to officers walking in the area and locating found human remains next to the roadway.
York Regional Police say they found a body in a rural area in the village of Kirkfield in Kawartha Lakes, around 150 kilometers from Toronto. They were searching there for 57-year-old Yin Zhang, who went missing from this wellness center in Markham on July 25th. Investigators believe she was assaulted there and suffered a serious injury.
At this time, we're still waiting for the Center of Forensic Science and the Office of the Chief Coroner to be able to identify these remains for us. We are no longer in the area searching, but we are continuing with the investigation.
Police have charged 26-year-old Chongling Yang with kidnapping, forcible confinement, and aggravated assault. Investigators say the accused's white Ford van was seen in the area at the time of Zhang's disappearance, and the investigation determined the vehicle had traveled to Kirkfield. The accused was also seen near the van with a large green compost bin like this one. Police said today the green bin was located alongside the human remains.
Pending the investigation as well as identification of the deceased, it is possible that charges will be upgraded.
Investigators say they still don't know if the accused and Zhang knew each other, but they do believe that she was targeted. They're also still trying to determine if others were involved, and they're asking anyone with information to contact the York Police Homicide Unit. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Markham.
Toronto police say overall occurrences of hate crimes in the city are up 55% from last year. Speaking to the Police Services Board meeting today, Chief Myron Demkew detailed which group has been targeted the most.
Anti-Semitism continues to account for more reported hate crimes than any other category. Of the 273 hate crimes so far in 2024, 45% were anti-Semitic.
DemQ says police attended 113 hate crime calls in July. And that's actually down from the more than 170 calls in June. The data represent verified hate crimes determined by the Hate Crime Unit. Since Hamas's attack on Israel last October and the ensuing war between Israel and Hamas, Toronto police have attended more than 1,500 suspected hate crime calls. They say they've laid more than 300 hate crime occurrence-related charges. Toronto is raising fines for more than 120 parking offenses on August 1st, including parking in a bike lane. The city says it's hoping the move will make roads safer, but advocates are concerned the rules won't be enforced. Olivia Bowden has more.
It's not just an annoyance when it comes to bike lanes, it's a safety hazard.
Albert Cole is tired of seeing cars park in bike lanes. He says it happens often on this stretch along Bloor between Spadina and Bathurst, and cyclists are forced to swerve into traffic.
So when people have to skirt around an illegally parked car, that puts them in danger.
Just last week, a 24-year-old woman was killed while biking in Yorkville. She had to leave the bike lane to avoid a construction bin illegally placed there. Her death marked the 5th cyclist fatality in 2024, and this is the deadliest year for cyclists since 2020. That's why Cole says he applauds the city for raising fines. The fine for parking the bike lane is now $200, up from $60. Fines for parking without paying are also going up, from $30 to $50. But he fears there won't be enough officers handing out tickets. There are only 3 dedicated to bike lanes.
You can have higher fines, but if you're not going to do the enforcement, that's a big deal.
And this professor agrees enforcement hasn't been reliable.
But it will only be as effective as the enforcement. And we know that enforcement has been a mixed experience.
The city says they're hoping the fines will encourage compliance, and enforcement could ramp up, depending on drivers' behavior.
I'm sure that the officers will try to educate the general public, maybe be a little lenient in the beginning, but as time goes on, they will increase their enforcement regimen.
The city will be monitoring the effectiveness of the new fines. They're hoping the ticketing will go down year over year. As well, the city is looking at their regulations around obstructions in bike lanes, following the most recent cyclist death. A congestion management report is coming out in the fall that could bring new rules. Olivia Bowden, CBC News, Toronto.
The province is officially ending its COVID-19 wastewater surveillance program as of today. The testing was used to monitor the level of COVID-19. The move to end it is drawing criticism from some public health experts, but Ontario's health minister defends the decision.
We had an increase during the height of the pandemic because of the need for additional COVID wastewater testing, and we are returning to what I would call a normal state of affairs and making sure that the federal government not only continues the wastewater testing, but also expands it to 4 additional sites.
The Public Health Agency of Canada says the expansion of their program will include 4 new sites that won't duplicate the provincial program. Ontario's NDP leader, Mart Stiles, wants the province to reverse its decision, saying wastewater testing helps prepare for future public health emergencies. Turning to other international news, Israel is being accused of carrying out a promised assassination after a top Hamas leader was killed in Iran early this morning. Israel has not commented, but there are growing concerns the killing could draw Iran into a broader regional war in the Middle East. Kayla Hounsell has the latest.
Revenge, revenge, they're chanting. Palestinians in the West Bank calling the death of Hamas's top political leader a tragedy. Ismail Haniyeh was killed in an overnight airstrike in Tehran, according to Iran's Revolutionary Guard and Hamas. Born in a refugee camp in Gaza, Haniyeh had been a key member of Hamas since its inception. He had been living in Qatar but was in Tehran for the inauguration of the new Iranian president. Hamas, backed by Iran, is blaming Israel and vowing retaliation. Hours later, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel will exact a very heavy price for any aggression against us from any arena. But he made no mention of Haniyeh and did not take direct responsibility for the attack. He did say Israel has delivered crushing blows to its enemies in recent days, including this one against a Hezbollah commander in Lebanon. The killing of Haniyeh marks the highest-ranking death of a Hamas political official since the war began.
The biggest thing I'm looking for, two things. One, whether this escalates into a wider regional war. Second, what impact this will have on the negotiations for a ceasefire and hostage release.
Haniyeh had been playing a key role in those ceasefire negotiations. In Gaza, people say his death is a disaster for everyone. The negotiations are not for Hamas, says this man. It's for all the people. The families of the remaining hostages taken during the October attack gathered in Jerusalem, marking 299 days since they've seen their loved ones.
Everybody in this region is, in a way, being held hostage to misguided leaders who want to take the region in a direction that is not a positive direction.
All as the region and the world wait to see what happens next amidst concerns this could lead to a wider regional war. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, London.
The CNE gets underway in just over 2 weeks, and that means job opportunities for thousands of young people. The job fair for the X was held today, and with youth unemployment rates rising in the province, this is the most applicants they've ever seen. Nama Weingarten was there.
Lines stretch across the NR Care Centre at Exhibition Place, with thousands of young people eager for a summer job and over a dozen vendors on hand to interview those patiently waiting. The CNE says they received 37,000 applications this year, the most in the X's history. More than 80% of applicants are aged between 14 and 29. CEO Daryl Brown says even though it's great that people want to work with them, the reason for this uptick in demand is not necessarily a good one.
I think it's kind of a sad commentary on the lack of availability, particularly of youth employment. At the end of the day, last year was over 18,000 applications, so it's pretty much double that this year, and I think that's by virtue of what's happening with the economy.
Do you want spears or chips? Stats from June show that youth unemployment across the country is at its highest since 2014, excluding the pandemic years, with Ontario's 16.5% youth unemployment rate higher than the national average of 13.5%. And teens say they're feeling the pressure.
A lot of places won't hire if you don't have experience. And it's very hard to get experience if they need experience to jobs. It's kind of a loop and you get stuck in it.
The competition was a lot because they wouldn't even read my emails, they wouldn't even call back. I've maybe had to apply maybe 4 more times and they still wouldn't answer me.
Before I got here, I was so confident. I'm here like half an hour early and then I walk in and I see the line and I'm like, whoa. And then I get nervous.
Out of the 37,000 people who applied, only 5,000 will get hired for this year's CNE. And vendors know just about what they're looking for.
Availability is number one, experience, and basically what they're looking for. I like to ask them what they're looking for in an employer and an environment, and then see if it kind of gels with what we do as well.
Now, this job fair is only for today, with some applicants getting hired on the spot, already signing their documents in there. And some, depending on the vendor, will have to wait to find out whether they got a job at the CNE, which kickstarts August 16th. Nama Weingarten, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Chris Potter joining us now with a look at the forecast. And Chris, it's hot and muggy. It's going to stay hot and muggy for the next little while.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to hold on to a heat warning all the way through tomorrow and possibly Friday and Saturday. Although temperatures are going to back off maybe a degree or two, we're still going to average 30 degrees for highs the next 4 days getting into the long weekend. We'll rewind the tape a little bit, look at July, this being July 31st. Actually seasonable for daytime highs, if you believe it or not. A lot of people have told me it's been hot, it's been wet. It certainly has been wet. Obviously, we broke a record for monthly rainfall for a month of July this month, and rightfully so after receiving almost 100 millimeters of rainfall. So once again, that's really the story. A very wet July, but a seasonable July in terms of temperatures. But obviously that's not the case right now. Heat warning surrounds the Golden Horseshoe right now. Warning of daytime highs at 30 or a touch above, and humidex values approaching 40 rather. And that's what we're seeing out there today, and that's what we're going to see for the day tomorrow. With this kind of heat and instability though, even though we don't have a system moving directly through, we're going to start the evening with some extremely localized bursts of rainfall. And you can kind of see just how quickly that developed over the last hour. The upper winds are forcing it down towards the downtown core, so it's moving across the Gardiner right now, Toronto Island, but there still is some activity that's going to slide its way in towards Brampton, but that should break apart. We will 100% dry through the late evening. And then we have high pressure building in. For the most part, that's going to stabilize the weather for tomorrow, but unfortunately, the same setup will be in place. Because of the heat and instability, daytime heating, which is simply just the sun heating up the land heats up the air begins to rise, then you get into redevelopment of these pop-up showers and thunderstorms. That's what's going to happen for tomorrow, but it's going to be different. The steering winds weaken a little bit and they change direction, so it should hold it just north of the lakeshore, north of the downtown core, along the 401, but if that's where you're traveling, just be prepared for those bursts of rainfall, kind of on and off, if you will, through the afternoon and evening. And then for Friday, we get into a little bit more of a rainfall risk. Highs around 29. The bulk of the heavy rain should hold to our southwest. Still hot and muggy for Saturday and Sunday. Monday, we cool off Kelda with a high of 26, feeling like 30.
I like the sound of that, the cool off. Yeah. And that is our show for you tonight. Thanks for joining us.